You've been told that if you think positive thoughts and visualize your dreams, the universe will magically deliver them to your doorstep. The law of attraction promises that your thoughts literally create reality, that consciousness shapes the material world through some quantum mystical force. But here's what nobody wants to tell you. That's mostly nonsense. Yet there's a kernel of profound truth buried under all the pseudoscience and wishful thinking, and Carl Jung understood what that truth actually is. Your thoughts don't magically manifest reality through cosmic vibrations, but they do shape reality in ways that are simultaneously more mundane and more powerful than any New Age guru wants to admit. Today we're exploring what Jung actually said about how the psyche interacts with reality, why manifestation culture gets it completely wrong, and what's actually true about the relationship between consciousness and the world we experience. Let's start by dismantling the popular manifestation myth, because we need to clear away the garbage before we can get to what's real. The Secret and similar manifestation teachings claim that thoughts are magnetic energy that attracts corresponding experiences from the universe. Think about money, and money appears. Visualize your dream partner, and they manifest. This is presented as a law of physics, like gravity, except it's completely made up. There is no scientific evidence that thoughts emit vibrations that attract corresponding material reality. Quantum mechanics doesn't support it despite manifestation teachers constantly misusing quantum terminology. The universe doesn't care about your vision board. Reality is not a cosmic vending machine where you insert positive thoughts and receive corresponding outcomes. But here's where it gets interesting. While the mechanism is fake, something real is happening when people focus their thoughts and intentions, not what they think is happening. Carl Jung spent decades studying the relationship between the psyche and reality, and his conclusions are far more nuanced and practical than the manifestation mythology. Jung didn't believe thoughts magically created external reality. He felt something much more profound. The psyche and the world are not separate things, but interconnected aspects of a unified reality, and that by changing our internal psychological state, we inevitably change how we interact with and experience the external world. Jung's concept of synchronicity is often misunderstood and co-opted by manifestation culture. Synchronicity isn't about thoughts causing events. It's about meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden connections between inner psychological states and outer circumstances. Jung observed that when people underwent significant psychological changes, their external circumstances often shifted in ways that seemed improbably correlated but couldn't be explained through normal causation. Someone working through father issues suddenly and unexpectedly reconnects with their estranged father. Someone integrating their shadow encounters people who mirror back their previously denied traits. These aren't caused by thoughts manifesting reality. They're the psyche and world operating as a unified system where changes in one domain correlate with changes in the other. Here's the part of the manifestation teaching that's actually true but gets explained completely wrong. When you change your psychological state, your behavior changes. When your behavior changes, the responses you get from the world change. When those responses change, your circumstances change. This isn't magic. It's psychology and sociology. If you genuinely shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, you'll take different actions. You'll see different opportunities because you're primed to notice them. You'll take risks you previously avoided. You'll present yourself differently to others, who then respond differently to you. The outcomes you experience will shift not because thoughts are magnetic, but because you're literally doing different things and being perceived differently. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you actually are rather than who you've been conditioned to be. As you individuate and integrate shadow material and align with yourself, your external life naturally reorganizes to reflect your internal transformation. But this isn't instant or magical. It's a gradual process of psychological change, manifesting as behavioral and circumstantial change. The manifestation gurus are selling you the conclusion without the actual work. They're saying you can skip the difficult psychological transformation and think your way to new circumstances. That's a lie. The thoughts alone do nothing. The transformation does everything. Let's discuss projection because this is where things get really interesting. Jung understood that we don't see the world as it is. We know the world as we are. Our psychological state acts as a lens that filters and interprets everything we experience. If you're carrying unconscious shame, you'll perceive judgment in even the most interactions. If you're harboring unconscious anger, you'll perceive hostility in ambiguous situations. Your internal state literally shapes your perception of external reality. When manifestation teachers say your thoughts create reality, they're accidentally touching on something true about projection. However, they confuse subjective perception with objective reality. Here's a concrete example of how this actually works. Two people lost their jobs on the same day. Person A sees it as catastrophic proof that they're a failure, and the universe is against them. Person B sees it as an opportunity to pivot toward work they actually care about. The same external event, completely different experienced reality based on psychological state. Now here's where it gets deeper. Person A, convinced they're a failure, will approach job hunting from a state of desperation and self-doubt. They'll settle for the first position offered, even if it's terrible. They'll present poorly in interviews because their energy screams, "I'm not good enough." Person B will take time to clarify what they actually want, will network from a place of confidence, and will present well because they believe they have value to offer. Person A recreates their previous misery. Person B creates something better. Did their thoughts manifest different realities? No. Their psychological states led to other behaviors, which led to different outcomes. This is what Jung meant by saying the psyche and world are connected. Your inner state doesn't cause outer circumstances through magic, but your inner state determines how you perceive, interpret, and respond to circumstances. And over time, your responses shape which circumstances you encounter and create. This is manifestation, but it's the slow, unglamorous, actually real version. Not cosmic ordering, but psychological causation operating through normal human behavior and social interaction. The problem with this truth is that it requires actual inner work. You can't just visualize. You have to genuinely transform. And that's hard and slow and unsexy to sell. The shadow is particularly important here because most of what manifestation culture teaches is actually shadow work in disguise, badly explained. The shadow contains all the parts of yourself you've rejected, denied, or never acknowledged. These unconscious contents don't just sit there passively. They influence your behavior, your perceptions, your choices. If you have an unconscious belief that you don't deserve success, you'll sabotage yourself in ways you don't consciously recognize. If you have unconscious anger, you'll create conflict without meaning to. Your shadow manifests in your life through your behaviors and choices. Integrating the shadow, making unconscious contents conscious, this is what actually changes your life. Not because integration magically alters external reality, but because it stops you from unconsciously sabotaging yourself and allows you to act from wholeness rather than fragmentation. Manifestation culture sells the fantasy that you can bypass shadow work. Just think positive thoughts and ignore negative ones. But Jung knew this was not only ineffective, but actually harmful. What you resist persists. What you repress grows stronger. Trying to manifest positive outcomes while refusing to acknowledge your shadow is like trying to drive forward while pressing the brake. Your conscious intentions say, "I want success," but your unconscious shadow is terrified of success because it means visibility and judgment. The shadow wins every time until you bring it to consciousness and integrate it. This is why so many people who obsessively practice manifestation techniques never see results. They're working against their own shadow while pretending it doesn't exist. Here's what Jung would say about effective manifestation, though he'd never used that word. First, become conscious of your actual psychological state, including and especially the parts you don't want to admit. What do you actually believe about yourself, about others, about how the world works? Not what you wish you believed, but what you actually believe at the level where beliefs drive behavior. Second, work to integrate shadow material so your conscious intentions and unconscious beliefs align. You can't successfully pursue something externally while unconsciously rejecting it internally. Third, From this place of greater integration and self-awareness, take conscious action in the world. Your actions, coming from a transformed psychological state, will naturally create different results. This is a real manifestation. It's just boring compared to the cosmic vending machine fantasy. The concept of the self in Jungian psychology is the organizing principle that orchestrates individuation. The self is not the ego, not your conscious personality. It's the totality of your being, conscious and unconscious, and it has its own intelligence and direction. Jung believed that as you align with the self, as you become who you actually are rather than who you think you should be, your life naturally arranges itself around that authentic core. Opportunities that align with your true nature appear. People who resonate with your authentic self show up. Circumstances shift to support your individuation. This looks like a manifestation to outside observers. But it's not thoughts creating reality. It's the self-organizing reality around your authentic being as you grow into it. This is why fake manifestation doesn't work. You can't manifest from the ego alone. If your ego wants something that's misaligned with yourself, no amount of visualization will bring it. You'll either fail to get it, or you'll get it and discover it makes you miserable because it's not actually what you need. Real manifestation, which again is just Jungian individuation by another name, happens when ego and self align. When what you consciously want matches what you actually need for your development. Then your actions flow naturally. Opportunities appear that you're prepared to see and seize, and your life transforms. However, this requires knowing yourself deeply, integrating your shadow, and surrendering the ego's agenda to the wisdom of the self. That's hard, much harder than making a vision board. So here's my question for you. Have you noticed that your external circumstances shift when you do genuine inner work? Can you distinguish between magical thinking, which posits that thoughts create reality, and the actual psychological process of transformation that leads to behavioral change and different outcomes? Drop a comment and share your experience. I'm curious how people navigate this distinction in their own lives. The truth about manifestation is both more disappointing and more empowering than what's usually taught. Disappointing because there's no shortcut. You can't just think your way to a different life. You have to actually become a different person psychologically, which requires confronting everything about yourself that's uncomfortable. You must integrate your shadow, align with yourself, and take other action from a transformed state of being. That's years of work, not weeks of affirmations. But it's empowering because it actually works. Real psychological transformation does change your life because it changes how you perceive reality, how you behave, and therefore what you create and experience. The mechanism is mundane, psychological, and behavioral, not magical and vibrational. But the results are real. You genuinely can transform your life. You just have to do it the hard way, through actual inner work rather than wishful thinking. Jung understood this. The manifestation gurus selling you cosmic vending machines don't want you to know the truth because it doesn't sell as well. But the truth is what actually works. Thoughts don't shape reality through magic. Transformed consciousness shapes reality through changed behavior. That's the real secret. And it's been hiding in plain sight in Jungian psychology for nearly a century. If this exploration of what manifestation actually is versus what it's sold as has changed how you think about creating change in your life, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We're cutting through spiritual bypassing and pseudoscience to get to what actually works, the real psychology behind transformation, the truth about how consciousness and reality interact. Thanks for thinking critically with me. Remember, magic isn't real, but psychological transformation is, and that's more powerful anyway.